There is one specific song that changed the trajectory of hip-hop in a drastic way, and without it there would probably have never been a Tupac or a Kendrick Lamar. Today let's talk about the untold story of the message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, and explain why Grandmaster Flash actually doesn't have anything to do with this masterpiece. Let's go back to the 1970s, when disco was the real deal. People would wait in line for hours to get into clubs like Studio 54 and danced all night long. Disco was a party music, but these clubs were not accessible to everyone, especially inner city kids like the ones living in the Bronx. After being a heaven for the white American middle class in the 50s and 60s, the Bronx rapidly decayed. By the 1970s, the neighborhood was full of destroyed buildings and abandoned apartments. Crime and violence were on the rise, and crack started to spread like a poison, targeting low-income class people. How did this happen? Well, the city of New York made a series of decisions that would impact the future of the Bronx for many decades. Also, the United States were facing inflation since the mid-60s, leaving many people unable to afford rent, which were only getting higher, so landlords stopped doing repairs, which led to buildings falling apart. In the 70s, the stagflation crisis hit. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, stagflation is an economic situation in which prices keep rising, but economic activity does not increase. When he was elected President of the United States in 1980, Ronald Reagan put in place an economic plan based on the trickle-down theory. It's a strategy that revolves around cutting taxes, lowering costs, and less regulation for businesses, so they can invest the savings to hire more people and increase salary, which would result in people spending more and stimulating the economy. However, the strategy was highly criticized, as it resulted in just a few already rich people becoming even more rich. The economic policies of Ronald Reagan are also known as Reaganomics, and also involved turning government services over to private contractors and decreasing spending on domestic social programs. There are pros and cons to his policies, but the reality is that in 1982, unemployment reached its highest level since the Great Depression. Having to face these difficult living conditions and a complex economic situation, the inhabitants of the Bronx had to find an outlet, a way to express themselves. And that's when, from chaos, was born creativity. When hip-hop started to emerge, it wasn't just music but a lifestyle based on 4 components: rap, graffiti, breakdance, and of course DJing. And there is one DJ whose name was on everyone's lips: Grandmaster Flash. In the late 1970s, Grandmaster Flash teamed up with a group of MCs called the Furious 5, and not too long after they signed with Sugar Hill Gang Records, founded by the visionary music producer Sylvia Robinson and her husband, Joe. At that time, the band was used to making party songs, because that's what hip-hop was about. So when Sylvia Robinson approached them with the idea of making a song that would talk about social injustices to expose what was happening in the Bronx by the people living in it, the band was reluctant except for one band member who was definitely intrigued, Melly Mel. She presented him with the message written by Duke Booty and produced by herself and Diggs Chase. Duke Booty took inspiration from daily life in New York and the Bronx, and one specific event made it to the song: the 1980 New York City transit strike. On April 1st, 1980, 33,000 members of the Transport Workers Union went on strikes to fight for better salaries. During 11 days, there were no subway or bus lines working in the 5 boroughs of New York City, which was insane as it's the largest and busiest transit system in North America. Melly Mel also contributed to the song by adding one verse at the end in which he tells the tragic story of a young man who fell into the trap of violence and crime and ends up in jail. This verse was inspired by the song Living for the City by Stevie Wonder. After the song was recorded, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 agreed to release the message as a single on July 1st, 1982. Many people still think that the brain of this operation was Grandmaster Flash, but the truth is that he doesn't really have much to do with one of the biggest hits of hip-hop. Even if, of course, hip-hop as a whole wouldn't be what it is today without the unique DJing techniques he invented. Other artists like Curtis Blow with the song Hard Times or The Rake with Street Justice attempted to make hip-hop songs that would depict inner city stress, but the truth is that the message was the first one to really matter and to make an impact. The song resonated with people outside of the Bronx because the struggle it described, with lyrics like
"Push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head."
can apply to anybody going through a hard time. And the beat is so catchy and groovy that it stays in your head and makes you have a good time despite the lyrics. It also switched the focus from the DJ to the MC, because from this point in time, lyrics started to matter. The song went platinum in less than a month and was number 1 in NME's 1982 Songs of the Year ranking. In 2002, The Message became the first hip-hop song to be added to the US National Archives of Historic Recordings, one of the 50 recordings chosen by the Library of Congress. Also, in 2007, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Message was sampled by artists like Ice Cube in Check Yourself, and more recently by Cole Lorey in Players. But its biggest impact probably lies in the fact that thanks to that song, hip-hop moved from being house party music to becoming a social platform for many artists like KRS-One, Public Enemy, and even J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to learn what else happened in 1982, make sure to watch this video.